Thank you so much, Mr. Breguet, for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It is an honor and privilege to have you, and it has always been my dream to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I know we've been following each other on Twitter or X for years now. I wish I could have come sooner, but I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you. Yeah, I highly appreciate it. Yeah, we know for a long time, and you have been a star on what it was before Twitter, but you lost your last account, then now you switched to another account, and then you also I remember when your account got suspended. There were many folks, like I believe some may like left, like it was there was no excitement, like when your account got suspended. So what was your reaction, how you felt like when your account got suspended?
Yeah, so that was like what, September or October 2023, right?
Yeah.
I make a joke about beating up the Nazi who went to parliament, like the Ukrainian soldier. And yeah, that was no warning, no nothing. I get an email from Twitter telling me your account has been suspended. At first, I'm like thinking, oh, is it like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden I start realizing, wait, this is suspended as in like forever. Like,
Mhm.
my account is gone. And I tried to appeal. It goes nowhere. I don't believe the appeal process is real on Twitter or X nowadays because you submit an appeal, you get a response like 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
So there's no way somebody is reading it. And well, at first I was really, really frustrated. I mean, that was years of hard work, right? I mean, I started on in 2010, 2011. It took me over 10 years, of building this account, getting like I was almost at 50,000, 15,000 followers, and then to have it just taken away like this, that really, really sucked. So we tried for a few weeks to get it back. Like I at some point I even thought about getting, like a lawyer and be like, okay, it's absurd, I mean, obviously it was a joke. I
Yeah.
should at least get maybe just a suspension. And then when we saw it was going nowhere, we just decided, well, back when I say we, I mean I was with the BC, Conservative Party at that time as well, and we're like,
Mhm.
well, let's just create another account, right? And so at first I started a new account that was supposed to be anonymous, right? Prominent dog. And it was never supposed to become my new political account. I mean, the idea was once we would announce I was running, I would create another account just for the politics. And but then what happened is Anthony Koch, the political operative, like consultant, he was part of the Poilievre campaign. He
Yeah.
was working for the BC Conservative during the election. Somehow realized it was me. I thought he knew because I had followed him for weeks by then. And he finally realized it was me. And he said to, quote unquote, dox me. He said he told everybody, hey, this account is Brian, just go follow him. And then obviously this was at first a blessing because, well, I went from like, 200 people followers to over 1,000 in one day.
Yeah.
But then when it was time to run, I was like, might as well use this account. Everybody knows it's me. I already have 1,000 followers. Let's go. So let's just rename this account Brian Forlenga and use it. In hindsight, that might have been a mistake because for the 2 months where I was anonymous, I said a few things that, obviously the opposition party were able to use. Uh, but I don't really regret it. And yeah, now, I'm back to what, like 4,000. Uh, Honestly, my experience on X now is pretty much back to what I had before. I know I have a lot less followers, but I have all the people I care about. Uh, I get the same activity on my feed, so it's pretty much back to normal for me. I'm pretty happy.
Mhm. Yeah, and also I lost my account too. Like I lost two accounts back to back for
Yeah,
no reason. Like as you said, like despite like appealing, like it does not work. It seems like both are sitting, or they just like did it
I think they're
automated, like you are not going to.
Yeah, they're very strict. Especially, you cannot cross the line of inciting violence or wishing violence, right? Even if it's a joke or anything, if you say, maybe, even jokes, right? I mean, I got somebody who got suspended for 2 weeks because they told someone, if everybody was jumping off a bridge, would you do it as well? Which is a common expression.
Yeah.
And that was seen as like inciting violence or suicide. And so you really cannot cross this line. I think we're more free than we were before Elon Musk. But on the other hand, if you cross this one line, it's gone. And again, the appeal process is a joke, so you might as well just start from scratch and just rebuild your audience.
So, do you still believe this is how freedom of expression or free speech work?
In general, yeah, I mean, I still think, out of all the platforms out there, I'm pretty sure X or Twitter uh, is still the platform where you have most likely the most freedom of expression, much more than other platforms. I'm thinking of, I don't use Discord that much, and it would, I'm guessing, depend on the server. But, you think of Reddit, which is the the mod and the moderation is really, crazy. Like, you can get suspended for really saying nothing.
Yep.
And Blue Sky, my understanding is Blue Sky is Twitter with Reddit moderation levels. So, I'm on Blue Sky, but I never use it. And I'm pretty sure if I started using it for real, I would be suspended within like 2 weeks. So, it's not perfect. And I do believe the main issue really on X right now is the lack of people. When you get suspended and you appeal, if it could go to a real person that you could talk to, that would
Mhm.
really make a huge difference. But you can't. I mean, it's really just impossible, it seems. So the only way would be to get Elon Musk to learn about your account and bring it back. So it is what it is. I mean, I'm never gonna make a joke about punching a Nazi ever again. And yeah, I guess it was a good lesson.
Mhm. Yeah. So you ran in BC election like as a candidate, but was it a sudden decision or you already planned it that you are going to run on that election?
So I don't think it was a sudden decision, right? I mean, if I'm remembering the timeline, uh, summer 2023 is when the BC Conservatives start rising. I'm good friend with their executive director Angelo Isodoru, and back then the party has one MLA, John Restad, has no money really, like there is almost no donations. I think we're getting $50,000 from Elections BC from the results in 2020. Uh, and at this point, Angelo is the one doing all the work, like, let's be clear. But, I talked to him online and I'm like, I'm helping him sometimes, like, with polls. Like, we are doing one or two polls from, like, Leger or Main Street. And we're seeing, like, the potential for an actual right-wing party to destroy the BC Liberals. And at some point during this summer, Angelo is very concerned about uh, having candidates. Like, right, one of the things at first, and in hindsight, it might seem crazy, but when you're a small party, getting 93 candidates is not that simple to
Mhm.
convince 93 people. And we didn't want to be, and Angelo thought that as early as possible, if we could get as many candidates as possible, it would give the impression that, we organize. We're an actual party. We're not gonna be like in the past where, in 2020, there ran 19 candidates who didn't talk to each other. So he's recruiting candidates left and right. And I just tell him, I was like, hey, if you wanna, I can I live in Vancouver, Kingsway, where it's ran through now, but on the east side of Vancouver, it's the riding of Adrian Dix. He wins with like 60% majority. I'm like, if you want, I can run there. I live there. I'm gonna go collect the signature and campaign, that's fine. I mean, it would be fun to have a debate with the Minister of Health. And then we talk more and we realize that maybe Lenga would be a better fit because there's Michael Lee running there and I work in Lenga's. And that's again, at that time, we're not thinking about winning, right? We're literally
Yep.
just thinking, well, let's have a good showing. Ask my friend Josh if he could, manage my campaign. He's at UBC. And at that time, we're like, so, it's not a sudden decision, but it's also not a very serious one in the sense that we're not planning to win. We're not planning to actually campaign like every single day crazy with a big team of volunteers. We're gonna go in, have some fun, practice, see what it is to be in politics. And I would always remember, like Josh told me, yeah, it would if we could get like 7 or 8%, that would be pretty great already. I'm like, yeah, no, that I agree. That would already be a pretty good showing. And so we decided this in like September, October 2023. I finally put my candidate application, I think, in November. Uh, and we decided to announce in end of January 2024. So no, it wasn't sudden, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it was well thought out, or at least I thought so that at the time. Obviously, we never foresaw the rise of the party, right? I mean, well, because when I said yes, when I suggested to run, we were at 15, 16%. That was most likely not real. Like, let's face it, between elections, people get confused between the federal conservatives and the provincial ones. So we know we're not really at 15. So we're probably at 10, 12 if we run candidates. But so all of a sudden we start, by the time we announced in January, we're 25, 30%. So we're getting to the point where I cannot win my seat, but it's starting to get serious. And then a few months later, by the summer, we're at the point where winning isn't impossible. And then obviously the last big change would be end of August, when Kevin Falcon decides to suspend the BC United slash BC Liberals campaign. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, crap, we're now it's a 50-50 race essentially. So so we're gonna
Yeah.
have to work a lot harder, spend more money, fundraise more, get more organized, which was fun, but a year before that wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Hmm. Yeah. And so what were you satisfied the result you received in the BC Conservative Party received? Was it a satisfactory results? What you were expecting? I know, like back in 2023, no one was predicting what could
Yeah.
happen, but suddenly things got changed. And I also need to know, did Conservative Party of Canada played a role for the BC Conservative?
Yeah, so I guess, if you ask me the question now, I would say yes. I mean, we should objectively be satisfied, right? That was an amazing result, like 43%, 44 seats, right? I believe, like
Yep.
just 3 seats short of taking government. Again, we need, I think if you had asked me the day after the election, I think myself and everybody else would have said we were disappointed because, we thought we could win, right? Myself, I lost by like what, 2.3%,
Yep.
like 400 or 500 votes. So, it was pretty crushing for a few days. But in hindsight, the fact that we came out of nowhere, again, 6 months before the election, we barely existed, right? We had like 3 staff members, we had no money, we were hoping at best we could get 10 seats. So I think objectively, in hindsight, we did amazingly well. Uh, you asked, did the federal conservatives play a role? Not
Mhm.
officially or actively, right? I mean, if I remember, I think Poilievre, it did endorse us, or at least maybe informally at some point. Uh, we did get support and help from volunteers from other conservative party in the country, like in particular Alberta. I think it's a normal thing. You have some of these people who just, are shipped from one campaign to the next for the big conservative family, but nothing official, nothing formal out there. So, you know, I wish it was, but I understand why Poirier, for instance, didn't do a big rally with John Restad. I mean, as much as, you want to free ride and benefit from the Poilier's popularity, I do appreciate a separation. I mean, we don't want to start having, every federal leader getting involved in every provincial election. So at some point, I think we need to respect the autonomy of those races.
Yep. And where would you see yourself like after this election? Like, are you going to run again? Is there any chances that we would see Brian running for office again in federal level or provincial level in upcoming years?
Yeah, no, right now I'm really not planning to run. My wife would absolutely kill me if I did. It was a fun experience. I I liked and loved some of the aspect. I disliked or other aspect of the election process. I'm not really federally, no, I have no interest of running federally. Honestly, I like my life in BC with my wife and my dog. If you
Hmm.
start becoming a federal MP, you spend so much time. I think there's one thing I learned. I've been studying and talking about politics for like decades now. But if there's one thing I learned running is how much time it takes for candidates. Right now, there was like the mini controversy that the legislature in Victoria only sits like 60 days in a year. And so, some people are like, oh, so MLAs don't work hard, they only work 60 days a year. But you have no idea. Like when I was a candidate, like from like February to October, like every weekend you have something. Like almost every weekend you have an event to go to. You have to go to a temple, you have to go to a rally, you have to go meet these people. So this is and I wasn't even elected, and I wasn't even taking that seriously for the first 6 months, like in the summer. So it's very tiring, and that's on top of this, if I'm being more selfish here, I'm more like a policy type of guy. I like to give my opinion and be part of the policy shaping process. And if you're just a candidate, unless you're a really high profile candidate or a lot of experience, you don't really get involved. Your job is to go shake hands, knock on door, and fundraise and be quiet. That's essentially what your job is. So I have no interest in doing this again. We're seeing major MPs of the federal conservatives who used to give their opinions, and they say nothing nowadays, right? I mean, the only thing they ever said publicly is like the axe the tax, fix the budget. I understand the communication aspect of it, but it really, really doesn't work for me to be uh, told so much about what to do. So for this reason, I don't think I'm gonna run again in for MP or MLA. No.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, it seems like they are more tight, like we also read a report with respect to Pierre Polier is tightening the his caucus what to say, what not to say, like unlike, so any mostly like maybe Green or NDP could be exempted because of their number, but Liberal is the same, like what
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can say and what you can't say, otherwise you will be kicked out from your
Yeah,
position.
and as I said, I totally understand, modern communication strategies, this is how it works, right? You want to look united, you don't
Mm,
want to have like especially the federal level, you don't want to have 343 different voices.
yep.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, but at the same time, I think Canadians need to realize that we have a party structure and a party discipline in Canada that is much stronger than in almost any other country in the world, right? I mean, if you look at the UK, MPs are over there have definitely more freedom than they have here. So I don't know exactly who to blame. I think we can blame the media mostly because, whenever there is any any MP or MLA or candidate who will say anything slightly different, they will jump on it, right? They
Mm-hmm.
will jump on it and make a big deal out of it. And when they make a big deal, then we lose the day. The party has to do damage control. And I feel the media should just, they're playing a big role in this. I mean, if they would just accept that, different candidates have different opinions sometimes, and especially when we have those big 10 parties where we're not going to agree on everything, and it's fine. It's healthy to sometimes not agree on some stuff. Uh, if the media could just play their role and not exacerbate those differences, that would be great. But they're not going to do this. So because of how the media, act, then modern political parties have decided to just really, really have like a really strong party discipline. And yeah, I'm talking about the conservative, but as you said, the liberals are the same, right? And we see it, right? Because every time a federal liberal, as soon as they left caucus,
Yep.
like they resign or they got fired, then all of a sudden, they open up and they're like, oh yeah, I hated this. Oh yeah, I didn't want to do this, right? Not Mark Carney, like what was our finance minister before? Like Bill Moore. Bill
Bill
Moore.
Morno, yep.
Yeah, I mean, he gave many interviews after his departure where he was like, oh yeah, I was always disagreeing with Trudeau on what to do with the deficit. And I'm like, okay, but this is crazy that, we never heard of those. differences before. So essentially, Canadian politics is one leader with a bunch of staff members and a few key MPs, and they decide everything for the party, which, I don't find particularly healthy, if you ask me.
Hmm. Yeah, let's talk about, as we are talking, jumping to federal politics. So, were you shocked on Chrystia Freeland departure on December 16? Then now, yesterday, Justin Trudeau stepped down as leader of Liberal Party and also as Prime Minister whenever the new leader be chosen.
I think I was more shocked at Freeland, when she left, or she got kind of fired, right? I mean, let's face it, it seems Trudeau was trying to get Mark Carney to take her job and to force her to do like really, really stupid policies such as the GST holiday and the $250 check sent to everybody. So I think I was more shocked at this because, she had been on his team, from the start, right? And
Yep.
she was the finance minister, deputy prime minister. So I thought she would be in until the end, So I was pretty surprised. I was less surprised yesterday when he finally left. I honestly thought over the last few weeks it, there was no way he could last until October. I mean, even with his ego, the entire caucus was against him. We were starting to get polls where we literally, have the Liberals at like 9 seats, like across Canada, right? So they
Yep.
wouldn't even be official party, recognized as a party for the status. So I wasn't too surprised he left yesterday, and I think it was the logical decision. He really, really tried hard to remain, but there was a little chance for me. It was either he was gonna resign like very early, either yesterday or this week,
Mhm.
or then he would really go all in and be like, let's call a snap election. That was a small chance of him doing this. Let's just call the bluff. Let's go in an election, and if there is an election, we don't have time to find a new leader. But
Mhm.
him staying as leader until what, October? No, that's it. And it wasn't possible.
So what would the advice you would be given to Trudeau if you were his advisor? Like, should it go for an election rather what he did yesterday? That was the right thing.
Oh no, no. If he went for an election, that would just be for him, right? And he would have been absolutely destroyed. So no, the only move he had, the correct move was to resign and to try to replace the leader. I mean, Trudeau at this point, he's so hated. I honestly cannot remember a politician being as hated as he is. We've seen many politicians where after 10 years in power, Christy Clark, Gordon Campbell, even Stephen Harper, right, in 2015, where they were really, really not liked by the end.
Mhm.
Even Kathleen Wynne, Joshua in Quebec. Well, Joshua left technically, but I don't think I've ever seen somebody as hated as Trudeau. Well, I saw it when I was door knocking for the BC election. We would go and say, "Hi, I'm Brian, the conservative candidate in your riding," and so they would think we're the federal conservative, and so many people were like, "Oh yeah, we need to get rid of Trudeau." Really, nobody liked Trudeau, like maybe two people out of like 7,000. So there was really nothing else he could do. I mean, resign. He tried already to apologize, change his policies on, like, he openly admitted making a mistake on electoral reform, on immigration, but it's too late. People would not forgive. So try to leave. And I don't think the Liberals can win the next election, but they can maybe save the furniture now at least, because really, I genuinely believe if Trudeau had remained, he would have finished fourth in seats. I honestly believe he would have, 10, 12, 15 seats max.
Mhm. Yeah. So if he resigned back in 2022 or maybe 2023, do you think the number would be better and they had
Oh
a
yeah.
chance to form government again?
Yes, yes. I believe if he goes in late 2022, maybe 2023, yes. If he goes there, they do an actual leadership race, like a few months, and depending on who becomes leader. Yeah, I do believe, there is a desire for change. It can have a very, very strong desire for change. And Poilievre is incredibly popular, in terms of how many people know him, and his videos really get like 40 million views and whatnot.
Mhm.
That's like rockstar territory for Canadian politicians. But at the same time, Canada is a left-wing country. Canada, I always say, the default option are the liberals, and you need to convince people to not vote for the liberals. So yeah, no, if he had replaced, and I think, we've seen example of this, right? We just saw in the States where Biden was trailing by 10 points, they replaced him with Kamala Harris, which isn't even the best candidate out there, but just replacing him with anybody else gave them a chance. In BC, I'm pretty convinced that maybe one of the main reasons why the BC NDP managed to win is because they actually changed leader. So over the last 18 months. So, there is anger from like 4 years ago with the pandemic. And I think anybody who was in power during the pandemic will have a really, really hard time winning re-election. Maybe Doug Ford will be the only exception.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, the sooner he should have left like exactly 2 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so right now we see like liberal is in a leadership race and multiple candidates are expected to run, particularly Mark Carney, or Chrystia Freeland, Dominic LeBlanc, or maybe some other candidates too, and Farmer, I believe some minister may run in. But the history tells us that if you are going to be the leader at this time, you will. It means you won't long last as a prime minister. Then maybe you would be kicked out. Like we saw, like after Stephen Harper, Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole. If we take a look back in after John Christian, Paul Martin, last little long, I believe, maybe less than 2 years. Then we saw like many leaders changed in Liberal Party, and also we saw back in 1993 after Brian Mulroney, 1993 or 94. Then came Campbell. Just I think last uh, just few months. Then she won just two seats. So do you believe it is the right time to put your name for this race?
Rationally, no. I mean, especially if you're a big name like Chrystia Freeland, you pretty should wait it out, right? Because anybody who goes now, unless they're delusional, they should know that they're very likely losing the election. And I'm not sure it's going to be in October, but let's assume it's in October. I wouldn't be surprised if the new leader decides to go this spring. New leader, little boost, and you say, okay, let's go now. And plus, the NDP would not support this government anymore. But so I think anybody going in now, if they're rational, they're going to think that, yes, I will lose the next election, but if I do well enough, I can remain as leader, right? Uh, I'm skeptical on this because for all we know, this leadership race will be incredibly short, right? It might literally be a 6 weeks race. So it's not gonna be like a deep introspection, and it's not gonna be good for like outsiders to try to, it's really gonna be if there is one big name or two big names, that they're just gonna get all the support, the money, and whatnot, right? Just to organize. So I'm a little bit skeptical that after a defeat in October, that the party would not want to be like, okay, let's have a true leadership race because we have 4 years to do it. We're not in a rush. Let's actually have a debate about who we want and who we want to be. So, but again, I'm thinking, I really think it depends who you are, right? If you're Christy Clark, a short race now, uh, where maybe some of the big names don't go, that could be your best chance to actually win. I'm thinking of Christy Clark. I'm thinking of Mark Carney in particular, where that you want somebody who's not associated with Trudeau and still big names. So that might be the best chance. If you wait for after the election, you might not have this chance ever again. But for somebody like Chrystia Freeland, I don't know if she should go now. Maybe wait. Either you go after the election in October or in 2028, like if they lose again, the federal liberals. So I'm not sure exactly why any big name would want to go now.
Mhm.
And honestly, we're gonna see if we see big names. And again, I think the for me the test would be, does Chrystia Freeland go for it? Because
Mhm.
Chrystia like going for it, she's a big name in theory, but she's not in politics, right? She's not doing anything right now. So the risk level is pretty low. Uh, and I would expect a couple of like middle names, like by this I mean like people are in politics but would never win otherwise, like Dominique Leblanc, Champagne. Those people, I don't think they would win an actual true leadership race with big names. But this time, you never know, right? I mean, there might not be that many people or that many big names. So you get to be prime minister for a few months and you're well positioned to remain leader, or at least it gives you a chance after. So we will see.
Mhm. Yeah, and NDP has been propping up liberal government for last, I think now it has been 3 years almost.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So do you think like other some political pundits who think like Jagmeet Singh is just propping up liberal government for the sake of his pension? Is pension is worth?
Uh, Yeah, well, for sure there are people who think that Singh is only propping up this government to get his pension. Uh, I'm skeptical on this. I'm not saying it has no influence, especially now that we're like, what, 1 month away from his pension. Obviously, people are people, right? I mean, if you're 1 month away from a pension that will give you, for him, that's gonna be 18% of his salary, so 18% of, $200,000, that's still a lot of money, right, for the rest of your life once you're retired. So it probably has a small influence. Uh, I believe, the main reason the NDP didn't want to go and still doesn't fully want to go is they don't have the money to really run a full campaign. And polls are terrible for them, right? I mean, if the election were tomorrow, they would most likely lose seats. They would probably lose half of their BC caucus.
Mm-hmm.
They might make a few gains in downtown Toronto, like Danforth, Davenport and whatnot. But they would lose Northern Ontario, Northern Manitoba. So they would be decimated, right? So I don't really blame them for supporting the Liberals. I think their main mistake might have been more to what they ask for. I mean, they can brag all they want about, dental care and pharma care, but dental care is great, and but the liberals have already managed to claim or to take the credit. Pharma care is kind of a joke, right? It's like contraception and two other things, and it doesn't apply to anybody. Um, if I know they were not in a position of strength, or at least they put themselves in not a position of strength. But for me, my opinion, and I might be an outlier in Canadian politics, is if you're supporting a government, I would like cabinet positions.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want a coalition. If I'm gonna do a coalition and be accused of doing a coalition,
Yep.
then sure, but I want cabinet minister. I want three NDP people to actually have cabinet positions. I would not support, and I think that might be the mistake. Either this, or you should have asked for electoral reform. I'm sure they did. They might have tried, and the Liberals said no. But the fact that they said yes to the really weak deal that they said yes to is really shows that how like weak the NDP can be at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are right. I believe you tweeted about that thing, saying pension, how much you would get.
Yeah.
Like so it means right now it is a stronger power as compared to rather than just dissolving this parliament and going for an election. Then conservative would be super majority, so they won't have any like power or
Yeah.
no authority, or their seat would be lower. Then like this is common sense. I think I must agree with you, and every person should agree with your thought. But I don't know, like just some like conservative supporters or conservative
Yeah.
leader itself, and other folks are also calling out this is just things pension. But let's dig in on the NDP. So NDP lost, like we saw, like back in 2011 after Jake Layton was the leader. Am I correct? So they became for the first time official opposition, but after late Jake Layton passed away, like he stepped down, then he diagnosed from cancer. But then Thomas Mulcair took the help. In 2015, they could not hold it. Like they came, I think, third. And
Yeah.
but in 2019, NDP under Jagmeet Singh dragged more down.
Yeah.
It mean they came like I think 20 or something like that. Those number. But in 21, they slightly got a boost, but it was not just 25. But it seems like NDP members are not willing to change the leader. Is it because just is it Singh is on the authority, or people just there is no one would take the charge of NDP?
That's a very good question. I mean, clearly the NDP under Jagmeet Singh has change strategy from they're not trying to form government, right?
Mhm.
I don't even think they dream of forming government. Jack Layton wanted to form government,
Yeah.
so that explains a lot of their decision, including supporting Trudeau, right? I mean, they would
Mhm.
rather be, a small party that influence his policies with 24 seats than trying to take a risk and go for official position and government. Why is it? I think people you mentioned 2019. 2019, Jack Meeting did very well. I know it looks bad compared to
Mhm.
2015,
Yep.
but when the election started, they were behind the green, right? I mean, I think people forget this. And I think people forget that 2018, 2019, there were mini green surges and momentums all around the world. Like they were
Yep.
winning in Austria, in Germany. So, and we were seeing this little surge in Canada where there was a legit chance for the green to finish third. And so Jack Meeting did a very good 2019 campaign, won the English debate, I think very, very clearly.
Yep.
And he started at 10, he finished at 20%. In terms of seats, it sucked, but there was momentum. There was really promise and potential. Uh, then 2021, it's a different Jack Meeting, and since then, I don't know what happened to the 2019 Jack Meeting. So why is it that the NDP is not replacing him? Because he's absolutely useless, right? I mean, sometimes he's literally, I think, I'm sorry to use this term, but when he makes videos and what he says, he sounds like an idiot, right? But even when he doesn't, he doesn't seem to have a lot of political instinct and a good strategy. I don't know why they're not replacing him. I guess they know either they're happy with just getting those deals and a concession from Trudeau, or they don't think they could do better. But the federal NDP is a weird party, right? I mean, if for instance, th- most of their members, I think truly nowadays don't care about winning. They don't want to take power. It's more about purity. And so, you see those insane comments from like NDP supporters on Twitter where they're like, oh, if Rachel Notley or John Horgan were the leader of the federal NDP, I wouldn't vote NDP because they would just be like the liberals, right? Those guys are too centrist.
Mhm.
So I think, to me, it's really funny to see we have provincial NDPs in BC, Manitoba, Alberta that are very well organized, the serious party that want to win power, and then we have the federal NDP that is kind of a joke most of the time. So I guess, if many people in the party think this way, they probably think that Jack Mitzing isn't doing too bad of a job, so why replace him? But it is puzzling to me how unserious they are at times as a party. And, you know, again, how do they tolerate? We now have a situation where the federal liberals, their main opponent on the left, they're down by 12, 15 points compared to 2021. And the NDP, the NDP should be up. They should at least be at 25, 26% right now. Like, and they're not. They're literally down. We had a poll yesterday of them at 15%, right? So how do you excuse being down when your main opponent is down as well? This is complete failure of a party. But I mean, if they're happy with him, keep being a joke, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And but if NDP supported conservative motion like last two non-confidence motion, so it would go in the best interest of NDP, right? As liberals are down in the polls.
I, I think, ultimately there's a difference between the polls before an election and during an election, right? I think at some point Jack Singh would just have to take a leap of faith, right? I mean, polls might not be very good right now,
Mhm.
but if you finally stand up for yourself and you defeat this government, during an election, people will look for alternatives. And maybe some people who are currently voting conservative, they don't really want to go right wing. They just don't want Trudeau. So if Singh was to actually offer them an option to be like, you can get rid of Trudeau by voting for me, but there is a risk, right? I mean, if he does this, he could end up getting 25, 30% of the vote and many seats of official opposition, or he could end up at 15%, at 10 or 12 seats and really lose all influence on this parliament. But at some point, when you're in politics, it's the same as when you're in sport, right? I think you sometimes have to take those chances. You have to commit to a position and just believe in yourself. And I think that's what Trudeau did in 2015, right? He started third,
Mhm.
but he was like, no, we're gonna go. We made very clear decision. We're not doing a deal with the NDP. We're gonna be a more left-wing party. So he made decisions that back then were not necessarily the most rational one, right? I mean, pundits and commentators were like, oh, that's pretty risky what he's doing, but it paid off. So sometimes taking a chance pays off. Sometimes it doesn't. But you have to take this chance at some point.
Mhm. And where do you see NDP from now on? Like, if after election things resign, do you think ever, like in future, NDP has any chance to form a government in federal level?
Yes, I feel the liberal brand. I mean, people will say they've been dead before they came back. But if you look at the long-term trend, I mean, this is a party that is and a brand that is really, really dying. It doesn't even exist in most provinces anymore. Uh, I honestly feel, people forget that I think they were dead as a party and they only got saved by Trudeau because of the name, the charisma, the history. So I'm not convinced they can find another Trudeau next time around. So the NDP would have a very, very big opportunity to actually position themselves, and they could win official position this year in the election. That could be pretty big. But then we're back to, it's kind of like a catch-22. If the NDP does well enough to win, let's say 50 seats official opposition in October, then Jack Meeting will not leave. But Jack Meeting is not the leader that can take this party to government.
Mhm.
They would need somebody else. And so, but to get somebody else, they need to do badly this time. So, I mean, it's really a catch-22 for me. So, we'll see. I mean, the one thing I will say positively about Jack Singh is if you look at the trend in 2019 and 2021, his strategy is to get those urban progressives, right? He wants to win seats in downtown Toronto, Halifax, Montreal, and Vancouver, right? And his entire strategy has been to get those voters. It hasn't paid off, but if you look at the results, it wasn't far from it, right? I mean, he really lost many seats in Toronto and Vancouver by like very, very tiny margin. Like we're talking like, 200 votes and this. So there is an actual potential for them after this election, if the Liberals really collapse, they could be the party of, they could have a lot of Toronto, a lot of Vancouver, even a lot of Montreal, honestly, like 4 or 5 seats. So if they can get there, in the seat total, it might look bad because they will make those gains they want, but they will lose rural BC, Northern Ontario, right? They will lose their base with the realignment. So it could be a transitional year for them, but going forward, they could at least position themselves as like with the progressive alternative, and it's not the liberals anymore.
Mhm. And how do you see PPC? And also now we have a new party which is called Future Party or Canada Future.
Yeah, our Canadian Future, I think, or the Future Party, I don't remember, like the Center Ice.
Yeah.
The Canadian Future is not going anywhere. I mean, that's it's not a real option, let's face it. I went to, I don't, I like Dominic Cardy, a lot of times I will agree with him,
Mhm.
but he's creating a party for the 10 people who miss Christy Clark and Josh Harrer, right? I mean, so white boomers who want to go back to politics like it used to be. And so it's not happening. So they're not going to get anything. And the timing is wrong, I think. And the entire thesis of Dominic Caddy was Poiliev is not popular. He will not, Canadians don't want him. When he was at 32% in the polls, maybe you had a point. He's at 47. So, I mean, come on, you've been proven wrong pretty badly there. PPC, I don't know. I feel their best chance was definitely 2021 with the pandemic. They did well, overall. Getting 5% is not nothing. They didn't manage to win a seat. Uh, I think the issue, and I can see we can compare the PPC to the BC Conservatives, where the BC Conservatives, the people in charge, very early on said, we don't want to be the BC PPC, right? We want to be an actual organized party that, with serious positions, serious organization, and trying to win power. I don't think the PPC give me this impression. I really like Maxime Bernier, I think he's a really, especially like in 2019, for instance, if you watch the French leaders debate, I
Mhm.
think he wins it. And he was absolutely amazing. So when he's his true self, he's really great. The problem is most of the time he's not his true self as leader of the PPC because he has to find a way to remain relevant and survive above water at like 2, 3, 4%. So the pandemic gave him like this momentum. And since then, they've been going hard on immigration, and I will give them credit on this, but I don't think it's resonating. And the fact that they're not, it's still only Maxime Bernier, right? I mean, at some point, you need to have other people in your party. You need to
Mhm.
have other big names. The BC Conservatives managed to rise because, well, we got John Restad, and then we got Bruce Banham, and then we got other people, right?
Yep.
So the fact that the PPC has been completely unable to get anybody else that is like even half a big name
Yep.
is problematic. And obviously, with Poilievre as leader, if Joshua was the leader of the CPC, the PPC would probably be at 10, 15%. But with Poilievre as leader, the people who vote PPC, at least half of them are very happy to vote for Pierre Poilievre. So that might be a very difficult election for them. Ironically, it might work better once Poilievre is in power and has to be more centrist and moderate to
Mhm.
actually offer this right-wing alternative. But uh, they need to start being more organized.
Mhm. And Maxime Bernier is the only federal leader who appeared on the Sami Parvez show for twice, but we are looking for for him. I don't know, like he did not respond. Uh so like is Maxime Bernier is a problem for PPC like to gain more attention in the election. Like he ran in a by-election in Manitoba. He
Yeah.
lost poorly where he's supposed to perform very well. So is it time for PPC to change its leader?
I still think he's the best they have. And, again, I like Maxime Bernier, right? With that being said, at some point, maybe they should have had an actual leadership race. Maxime Bernier could run in it and most likely win it, but, that would give some credibility to your party, right? At some point, you're like, okay, you cannot be a party. They existed in 2019 already, right? So that would be their
Yep.
third election out there, and you still don't have a constitution. You have never had a leadership race. This doesn't feel very serious to me, right? So, but I'm not sure if there is anybody better than him. People will maybe say Derek Sloan, but I don't agree. I don't think they agree, and they represent the same type. Uh, there is the risk, to be hijacked by like one of those nerd job, really, really crazy, right-wing people, like, I don't want to say convoy type because I don't hate the convoy, but the convoy had some
Mm.
people as part of the convoy that were, let's say, you don't want to be friends with these people. And so I think there would be a real risk that if the people could win the leadership of the PPC. So I'm not sure. I think if I'm Maxime Bernier, just maybe start being more like the NDP of the right, where you propose a lot of policies and you stick to them, right? And I mean, we can make fun of the federal NDP, but the fact is that over the last 10 years or 15 years, they have managed to impose their agenda to a point where, pharmacare, dental care, these type of things,
Yep.
$10 childcare, it, under Paul Martin or Jean Chrétien, that would have been, impossible for the liberals to support those things. But now we're at the point where the liberals are claiming that it's their policies. So again, the NDP isn't in power, but they have managed to be very successful in influencing policies. So if I'm the PPC, I would start focusing a lot on this maybe, and so have a couple of actual policies. But you have to be serious, right? On immigration, aren't they proposing to have like zero immigrants for the next few years?
Mhm.
I'm one of the first people who talk about immigration and how we had too many, rise in immigration over the last few years on Twitter.
Yep.
But even I'm not saying that we should have zero immigrant next year, because it's insane. It doesn't make sense. So when you have those like crazy policies, and I feel they feel that they always need to go further, right? Because when, 3 years ago, they were saying, well, we need to have 200,000 permanent residents. And now that other parties are getting close to them, they're like, oh, then now we need to go to zero, right? And at some point, I'm like, just take the win. You influence, you say we should reduce permanent residents, the numbers. The liberals and the conservative agree with you. Great. You don't have to go more extreme than this. You won. You won that issue, even if
Yeah.
you're not in power. Take the win and move on.
Mhm. Yeah, and do you think like Maxime Bernier would be the UK's Nigel Farage for taking eight times to contest then win?
Maybe, honestly, I mean, I really wish Maxime Bernier would just go back. I mean, people have forgotten who he is, but if you go back to the Maxime Bernier that almost became leader of the CPC in 2017, and the Maxime Bernier of the French leaders debate in 2019, this is an option that is mostly libertarian, that I think would seduce, many people, maybe not winning the election, but you could finally, and one election, you're going to have your rise, the same way that Farage and the Reform Party, sometimes they have ups and downs, but last election and the next one, they could do
Yep.
very, very well. So show some patience. Stop running in Manitoba.
Mhm.
Honestly, I think that, I know this is technically your best seat, but somebody that sounds like me and Maxime Bernier, with our French accent, the idea that we would win in rural Manitoba. Come on, that doesn't work, I mean, so stick to Quebec where you're from, and if you don't win your seat, you don't win your seat. But I don't think this is very serious when you start running in rural Manitoba as Maxime Bernier. And so again, focus less on this and focus more on your policies. And over time, at some point, I believe if you're consistent and you're right, right, if you're right, the policies you're proposing are the correct one. At some point, people will recognize it.
So let's get back to conservative. Like, was it a luck for Pierre Pouliot to just get elected right now, as Canadians are sick with Justin Trudeau and Liberal, or it was is just on performance to get more attention as a young man?
So you're asking like why is Poilievre doing so well?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all of the above, right? I mean, the timing is right, right? I mean, people want change. They hate Trudeau. They don't want the Liberals anymore. So, I mean, for instance, if Erin O'Toole was the leader of the CPC, I'm
Yep.
pretty sure the CPC would be polling in majority territory, right? I mean, so again, the PPC would be higher, but they would be pretty high. So the conditions are right. His message has been very right. We need to give him credit. He has been spot on a key issues like inflation and housing, I would think mostly, and crime. He has positioned himself very early on those positions. And, again, in hindsight, you might say, oh, that's logical. But if you go back to 2022, when the CPC leadership was happening and Poilievre was all about housing, the other conservative in this country were not talking about housing. Like the
Mhm.
BC Liberals had a liberal, a leadership race in BC, and they barely talk housing. Like nobody took this issue seriously, even though that was their way to go back to being relevant. So nobody was talking about inflation. Even us, the BC conservative, we barely talked about inflation and how government deficits are fueling inflation. As a matter of fact, when we ran, our platform had a bigger deficit than the NDP. So Poilievre is a lot more consistent, right? He has identified the key issues and he took the right positions on all of them. So good timing, good policies, rebranding, himself is a pretty popular guy in the rebranding, no glasses, everything,
Yep.
has worked very well. So he has an incredible pool out there in terms of reach, thanks to social media. So he's doing everything right, right? So, and I think that's why he's so high. When you add everything, all the elements, they click and they're right, then all of a sudden you end up at 47%. So, with that being said, I think that we will see in the next few months how much of his support was truly solid and how much was just people who just wanted to get rid of Justin Trudeau. So, again, I don't think the Liberals, no matter who they choose as leader, can win the next election, but those polls we've been seeing recently at like 47 to 19, or there was one where the Liberals were at 16%. I think those with a new federal leader for the Liberals, uh, we will not see those ones. So maybe the CPC will go back to only 40%, which is still, very good, large majority, but not 250 seats majority.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you very much. Just last point. So you have also your own website, Too Close to Call. Are you still running good on it? And how often do you update it?
So officially, I still have the blog, I still have the domain name. I haven't. written or updated the blog, actively. I still like to have it because, I'm still gonna do projections, right? I'm gonna cover the leadership race and whatnot. I think the last time I updated it was I posted a post for that must have been the federal, not the when the provincial liberals in Ontario had their leadership
Leadership
race.
race.
So, I like to have a platform. Yeah, exactly. Like final projection for the OLP leadership race. So November 2023. Yeah. So it has been a long time now, but I'm still gonna update. There is a Canada simulator to do projections. I will update it. I will still post there. I prefer, it takes a lot of time to run the full website, and after 2019, I didn't want to do it as much. So if people like to get my projections and analysis, I think they're better off following me on X. But sometimes it's still convenient to have a website where you go, you can go post like more stuff, like more graphs, PDFs and whatnot.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much, Brian, for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It has been lots of discussion with you. I hope see you again. And before leaving, like, is there a like eye center party you are planning to? Like, is there anyone, or is it true like what you talk on social media?
For like what, like
Like
whether
eye center, you said like you will rebrand eye center and change the
Oh
flag.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, if they had done an actual leadership race, I always joke that I would, I would run because it's not a serious party, right? It's a joke. So me
Yeah.
running, and I think I could honestly win it because well, they have like 10 people, right? So I would get more people just through Twitter. Would just be funny, but they didn't do an actual leadership race. I met Dominic Caddy the other day. He made a joke about how he beat me. So no, I'm just gonna follow. If they do have a leadership race at some point, I think I might consider running just as a joke, because, but as a joke, but also I do believe, if we finish on this, the one thing that annoys me with the Canadian Future Party or Center Ice is, on one hand, this is a party that says, oh, we need a different party. We need to do politics differently. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. But then what they mean by doing differently is, let's go back to 2005 federal liberals, Paul Martin.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my God, again, you're just doing this for the 10 boomers who are unhappy with Pierre Poilievre. So,
Mhm.
so I'm like, yeah, let's create a new party and let's actually have radical policies. Let's have positions that usually are not adopted by the mainstream Canadian parties. And I'm not talking about, extreme Nazi policies. I'm just talking about like, let's privatize healthcare or this, or at least let's talk about this. Let's talk about nuclear. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about most of the issues that most parties have been avoiding. But that's not what he's doing. So I think we're wasting this opportunity.
Okay, I will just leave it here. Sorry, taking too much of your time. I know, like it's Tuesday. Maybe you have some other work to do. It was sir, an honor and privilege to have you on the Sami Parvez show. Looking forward to having you again.
Thank you so much. Invite me again. Try to get me and Maxime Bernier on the same. That would be an amazing show. So
Okay, I will definitely email him and CC you, or let's see how things work. So it would be very exciting to have you to folks who like each other.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.